who is now a farmer in Equatorial Guinea, will be kicked out of office, because in these societies they had spread fear. Fear is the most potent tool in the hands of African dictators. And cowardice is the Achilles heel of the citizenry. So I'm encouraging you not to be afraid. Don't be afraid for me. You should be afraid for the future if we don't do what we are doing now. This is the necessary sacrifice that was made by people like you and me that made it possible for you to live in this country for 29 years and probably nothing has ever scratched you before. In fact, when you complain about life here, it's usually complaining about the fact that it's too cold, or that your electricity is too much, or there's too much heat because you have to pay for it, right? I'm not in any way saying that there is no poverty. Of course, I've lived in America for 19 years. I know that there are a lot of poor Americans and that they have poverty in America. I know about police brutality. I know about racism. But our own case is worse than any of these things. Nigerians will prefer to go and die at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea than to live in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians prefer to go and live and die as a slave in Libya than to live in a free Nigeria. You can understand the gravity of our problem. And nobody, and I keep saying nobody is safe in a country like that. You don't have to offend the government in Nigeria to die in an accident. You don't have to offend the government in Nigeria to be an activist before the house in which you are living, newly built, can collapse on you and you'll be trapped and you die in it because there's nobody regulating the building of houses. Corruption has taken over. You don't have to offend the government to die of stray bullets. In fact, more people die in Nigeria for refusing to part with small money to the police than most activists who actually go and engage in protests. So you can imagine if all of us were protesting at once, we would get the country saved and freed from oppression than when we are doing so individually, thinking that by hiding away, by being cowards, we will become free. It's not possible. So the lawlessness we have had, the chaos we've had, is something we have to end in 2019. And I urge you, barrister, not to be discouraged because help is on its way. Thank you.
Because I saw you during the Alliance hospital attendance. We were trying to look here and there, left and right, in case it come over to come and arrest you. And I know they have the capacity.
Yes, it will shock you that there has been an attempt to assassinate me before in Nigeria many times. But like I keep telling them, this is not about me now. And I am not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of what they can do to my body. I'm more worried about what we can do to rescue the country called Nigeria. And I'm sure that we're close to doing that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. I love Mustafa. Basically, I don't know, but I have a lot of things in my head that is
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear that.
I said I have a lot of things. I have a lot of thoughts, like thinking about Nigeria and those situations.
Yes.
But then again, I'm still a small girl, so I don't know if my thoughts are valid. So, like, if eventually you are elected president of Nigeria come next year, like, how do you want to go about the whole situation? Like, where do you want to start from? Because I don't know what Nigeria is just. I don't know what exactly. Where do you want to start from in such a nation? What is different problems, different angles, and that's number one. And then secondly, I've been following you and Fela very well, and I see both of you as very, very intelligent.
Did you say gentle?
No, very intelligent
Okay.
intentions for the country. And I was wondering, is there any, like, let's say collaboration or something between both of you? But then again, I can also try innovative that will come up and like ask you about men, president and vice president. So yeah, those are my two questions for now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your questions. Two track questions, lovely, beautiful questions. The first question is, where do we start from? My answer is, the regular refrain. We start from somewhere, right? But we have 10 starting points to take Nigeria on a path of progress, peace, and prosperity. And posterity will not forgive us, and I'm using the word us, if we don't do it by starting from those levels. First, we have to do security. We have to secure that country at whatever it will take. We must stop the bloodletting in the country. We must stop criminals from controlling our lives, both violent and non-violent criminals. Like when I say violent criminals, you're talking about kidnapping, terrorism, armed robbery. Non-violent criminals are those ones who are engaging in, pen robbery, and other form of robbing of the national patrimony. Secondly, and I think it's very, very important, we have to declare a state of emergency in the power sector. We have to electrify Nigeria. If everything needs to stop first until we electrify Nigeria, that is, provide electricity, we have to do that. Because by putting electricity in Nigeria, by putting light in Nigeria, by lighting up Nigeria, we will have better security, we will have better economy. A lot of things will unleash itself on Nigeria, right? Thirdly, and I'm talking about starting points now, we have to provide infrastructure in Nigeria. There's no reason why anybody going from Lagos to Ibadan should be spending 4 hours instead of 45 minutes. It just doesn't make any sense. Or that you are going from Lagos to Port Harcourt and you have to spend a whole day or sometimes 2 days, or you're going from Lagos to Abuja, the nation's capital, you have to spend 10 hours instead of 4 hours. This also includes that we have to put plans in place to provide mass transit system for Nigeria. When I was told that we were going to Kent earlier today, the most appealing thing to me was that I'm going to get on a train. I love getting on trains, and they said it would take an hour, but eventually we couldn't make it, but now we are connected. Nigeria has to develop its infrastructure, right? And then we move from there to making deliberate efforts in providing employment for Nigerians. We have to provide employment, we have to develop our economy, but I think for you to even start to think about an economy that works for the Nigerian people, you have to provide infrastructure, you have to provide power, and you have to provide security, right? And then education is a mega important, because it is education that will then become the powerhouse for sustaining a progressive and prosperous Nigeria. All of you that are out there, some of you came from nowhere. Nowhere. But look at what you are doing with your lives. Some of you came from somewhere, but you are helping to actually organize other societies. You are helping them make do of whatever they have to provide the best services. Some of the best architects in the world are Nigerians. Doctors, Nigerians. Best writers, Nigerians. Everything that you can imagine, Nigerians are there, but elsewhere but Nigeria. So there has to be also a deliberate effort to bring back Nigerians who have left and who have lost hope, who have mentally seceded from Nigeria, to come back. Just like the barrister said, when you want to go to Nigeria, the first thing on your mind is, can I make it in and out alive? It's legitimate fear. And if you have that fear, most of the time you don't want to go there. There is something I talk about everywhere I go to speak in the diaspora. It is how we use Nigeria to scare our children. The only way you can get your children to behave is to tell them that you are taking them to Nigeria. And they will behave. Because Nigeria is such a country that is what I call, you can use it as a fear factor. You know, just even for employees, if you have an international organization that has Nigerian branch, if you want to punish your employee, it is a way to just say, yeah, we are going to Nigeria. The employee knows that it's another way of saying that we are firing you. Even diplomats, when they send them to Nigeria, they have to pay them special allowances because Nigeria is seen as this bottomless pit where you go and nobody knows if you make it back or not. Places like Palestine has got better electricity than Nigeria. Nigeria and South Sudan are in the same spot in terms of per kilowatt consumption of electricity or availability of electricity. Whereas countries like Libya, Egypt are doing better. So Nigeria has oil, right? But Nigeria is the only oil producing country in the world that takes out its crude oil, sells it, and buys back from the people who are refining Nigeria's crude oil finished products. It's the only country in the world. It just don't make sense. Nigeria don't make sense as it is now. Nigeria is the only country in the world that the president goes to treat headache in London and then returns back home to a welcoming party. Or the son of the president falls off a bicycle, he's taken to Germany, and a Nigerian politician will put a billboard on the way to the airport welcoming the son of the president. I'm not making this up. There's something wrong with us, and I don't shy from saying it. But what I keep telling people is that whatever has been wrong with us is about to be right with us if we choose the right leaders, and we have an opportunity to do that in 2019. Duro Toye and other young people who are running, love them. I love them. It is very heartening that they are running and they are speaking and breathing life into the youthfulness that is desired and desirable for us in the next dispensation. But I'm selling myself to you as Omoyele Sowore and nothing else, with 30 years of activism underneath my belt, consistency underneath my belt, courageous leadership, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurial spirit underneath my belt. That's all I can sell to you. And I hope that they can collaborate with us or that we can come together. You see, something is very, very important that I should mention to those of you who are making the comparisons. I am not here to say that I'm the best. I can't be the best in a country that has 198 million people. But I worry about something regarding other candidates. I don't know that they can withstand the criminals and crooks in our country, because some of them have not had to deal with them before. Some of them have never been to jail before. Some of them have never been slapped before by police. Me, I have been slapped by police. I've been expelled from the university. I've fought the military. I have fought court gangs. I have fought all the corrupt governors in Nigeria. I've written about them. I've dared them. I've stood in courtrooms. I've helped to send some of them to jail. I've helped to recover money in Nigeria. I've fought all the witches and wizards in that place. So the other guys, I don't know if they can withstand pressure. I don't know, honestly, and I'm being honest. But I love them and I encourage them to keep pushing until one of us can rescue the country and reclaim Nigeria. That is my final answer. Thank you so much. Again, what has to happen in education is actually multifaceted. And I'm going to shock you guys a little bit with the fact that one of the things that needs to happen with Nigerian education is that we have to rebuild our curriculum. The curriculum in our education is the one that the British brought to us, and I'm speaking from London, so you understand that I'm looking us in the eye and saying to ourselves, our education is an education that is meant to train us to work for somebody as opposed to understand our environment. When I did geography and planning at the University of Lagos, I had more interest. Our professors had more interest in teaching us about the 5 American lakes than they taught us about lakes that are based in Nigeria. But that's just one thing. That's the philosophical part of what needs to happen with our education. The rest is economic and financial. We have to invest in education. We cannot continue the way we are now. And a lot of value orientation needs to happen in the education sector. Don't let me lie to you. There is nobody in Nigeria, let me say 60% of our education in Nigeria now is based on fraud. I do this as an investigative reporter. Even from primary school, parents are buying teachers or buying people they call mercenaries to write exams for their children from primary school. If you go to do WAEC, people are buying Expo to do WAEC. You go to the university, lecturers are being paid off to award. And I've heard of professors who help their students write their project and make money off of it. They sell plagiarized books, so the value reorientation that needs to happen will also have to happen with a lot of investment and infusion in the education system of competent hands. We have no option. We have to bring in people who are good teachers. That's why we want to hire 200,000 teachers for primary and secondary education right off the bat. The same thing we want to do for primary healthcare. We'll talk about that later. And our universities have to be monitored to be sure that the administrative system of the university is unbundled from the academic system of the of our system. The reason why I'm saying this is that I've also been a university teacher, what they call professor in the US, for close to 10 years. And what I saw is that you have to ease university teachers from the burden of administration on campus, so that the teacher is not the same person who is responsible for so many things that they are doing now. They focus basically and mostly on education, and the administrative sector is there to support the professors or teachers, and students must also be given a voice to determine what they want. We have gotten a lot of things wrong with education, including mostly the administrators. So importantly also, we must make education qualitative and free for now, so that we can catch up with the rest of the world. Another thing is that we must introduce technology at the lowest level. It makes me sad. It makes me sad, right, to know that our system of education is less in some places. What my daughter knows in the US as someone who is an equivalent of primary 4 is more than what people who are in year 1 in some high institutions do. Her library is bigger than that of my high school, which I graduated from in 1985. By the way, my high school in Ondo State, a community high school, is the same desk that I left there in 1985 that is still there. It's the same louver window, the thing they call louver, the windows, the ones that clap when you close them. It's the same thing that is still there. Half of them are blown off by wind and nobody has replaced them. Because every year, meanwhile, there are at least 4 intervention programs that are currently working in the education sector in Nigeria. You have in the Niger Delta region where I'm from, you have the NDDC, you have the higher institution tax, education tax intervention. There are about 3 different interventions, but they're just avenues for stealing and waste and mismanagement. That has to end. The moment we're spending the right amount of money in the education and appropriately, and they are not frittered away and mismanaged and stolen, we will be able to get qualitative education into the body, heart, and soul and brains of our kids. There's no question about that. but it has to be deliberate intervention. You are sitting in this class today, and I can talk to you virtually. I went to the University of Ibadan about 3 weeks ago when I went back to Nigeria to hire a hall for the university. They are still writing receipts with long hand, and they still have to bring out a bucket of water to count the cash. Nobody is doing that anymore. University of Ibadan. So that means that the university is no longer even powering a technologically driven society, because the university hasn't gotten it right. How can it contribute to society? So, but it's a long story, what I've seen, but I can tell you that I have the exposure to understand what needs to be done and done immediately to start to turn things around. Yes.
I'm from Canada, so unfortunately I can't.
You're from Canada.
Yes.
You're welcome to Nigeria.
Thank you. But I'm actually researching the tensions between counterterrorism and human rights protection in West Africa. So, what is your opinion on the current state of that?
Can you repeat that, please? Can you repeat that, please?
So the counterterrorism measures and the human rights protection.
Yes.
What is your opinion on the current state of it in Nigeria?
Okay, so I have covered terrorism for close to 12 years, particularly covering Boko Haram, and I've also covered the Nigerian military from the angle of human rights. And it is nothing to write home about. I'll be the first to admit to it. Our military is not practicing what they should in terms of protecting rights. And what we get from the military intervention in fighting terrorism is actually emboldening terrorism. I'll tell you, for example, that majority of the terrorist activities that has afflicted Nigeria in the last few years were actually created by mistakes made which led to violations of human rights. What do you think caused the Niger Delta insurgency? It was the violation of rights, of the environment first, but most importantly, it was the sacrifice that was made. A human rights activist and playwright named Ken Saro-Wiwa was sacrificed to international oil companies. He was summarily tried in a kangaroo court, killed by hanging by the military, and that was what led to the insurgency in the Niger Delta region. We moved from there. When the civilian regime came, they went and bombed a village called Odi. All of you are aware of it. Violated the rights of the people there. Even with Boko Haram, it wasn't until when their leader was arrested and summarily killed in a police station that it took the turn it took now. And that's what Nigeria is paying for. You go to the southeast. The southeast were just lucky that it didn't turn ugly, because Nigeria, instead of resolving some of the issues that had to do with their grievances with the indigenous people of Biafra, they went and sent in soldiers to quell them. So before you knew it, it was going to become another major insurrection because of violations of human rights. And we have evidence of this. So the government of Nigeria has not done anything to protect the rights of its people. And as a result, whenever it sows the wild wind, as they call it, we harvest hurricanes from insurgency. And that counterterrorism measure has to change. We have to put at the heart of our counterterrorism measures the protection of human rights by our soldiers, our military officers, and police. And for someone like me, it's a cardinal thing, because I am actually a human rights activist and have worked assiduously to fight against torture. I've spoken extensively and traveled with Amnesty International in the US as a victim of torture. I'm a victim of torture myself, and I cannot lead a country where the violation of human rights or the practice of torture is acceptable. Both locally and internationally, I will be a voice against torture, even if it means that we will offend even some of the powerful nations of the world who think that they can use it as a cardinal position to fight terrorism. It's not acceptable. So, but we know these things would fully integrate, the practices of, the international best practices for human rights in the government by working with organizations like Amnesty International, of which I'm a member in the U.S., and to ensure that we have a country that have massive respect for human rights. Do we have any more questions?
Yes. Good day, sir. My name is Sir Kadidama. Nice to you. Please spoke about your activism over the last 29 years, I think. And I really commend you for that. But what I really wanted to know is really deep in an activist and being in the presidency, you have to be more diplomatic and pass through a lot of procedures. So I was just really wondering, because even Buhari, when he was running for election, and he was saying, I'm going to tackle corruption and stuff like that, but he wasn't able to do that. I was going to ask, how would you bypass this? Not bypass, but get past this procedures and need to be diplomatic and all these problems that might occur in your fight for corruption.
Yes, so you're asking if how I intend to bypass the problems that often confront leaders who promise to fight corruption.
Yeah, basically.
Because there are some difficulties because of the procedures, rule of law, and the rest of it.
Exactly.
Yes. So the first thing that we're doing is to ensure that we don't come to the presidency via the purchasing order that they do in Nigeria. What I mean by purchasing order is usually the cabal that are interested in perpetuating corruption in Nigeria will bond together, and they will give massive amount of money to the presidential candidate, and they will purchase the candidate, his form for him. You guys knew that President Buhari claimed that he didn't have money, but somehow he was able to get 27 million naira to purchase his form to contest for presidency in those days. Following that, it turned out that he collected a lot of money from very corrupt sources. And when he got to office, he just couldn't do away with them because he had gotten in bed with them, either directly or indirectly. So he had to protect their interests. Special interest is the name for it. It is the name for the game. And what we are doing is bypassing and disrupting that process by ensuring that all of our fundraising is transparent and open. And we are going out there to ensure that when this is done, we are left with no doubt that our coming to office is publicly funded by public-spirited individuals, not the cabal that is controlling the oil industry, not the cabal that is controlling in different kinds of black markets in the country, not the political cabal that is waiting to get contracts that they will not implement. So when you look at all the cabals, and I know all of them, having done reporting on Nigeria political system for more than 12 years, I haven't fought the military, fought civilians, and fought all kinds of people. I know them. So as long as you are not in bed with them, you have no problem. What is hampering President Buhari's fight against corruption is that he is in bed and surrounded by corrupt people. And there's nothing he can do to wriggle himself out of it. If you combine that with his weakness and lack of capacity, and as we now know, illness, then you have nothing to fight. There's nobody to fight. When I'm elected into office, you will have an Energizer bunny in the presidential office who is not afraid to take on special interest. Because that's what I've been doing. That's been my career, my entire life.
Unfortunately, this might sound like I'm attacking you, but
that's fine.
Okay, good. You see, the thing with politicians is that sometimes there's no substance to their claims and the proposals. And so far, what I've heard from you is you've stated the problems, and one of the key problems you stated is leadership. And and you make it sound as though leadership is the only problem you have. I mean, I know you have said, you've mentioned education, you've mentioned, electricity, infrastructure, and stuff like that, and you're saying you will do it, but there's no detail to it, because it's easier said than done, and saying, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but our problem is deeper than that. With terrorism, you have tribalism, embroiled. That's not the right word. No, you have tribalism involved in the sentiments of that people. There are people actually in Nigeria, most of them in the north, that actually still believe that Buhari is doing the right thing because he's from the north. People are content with that. There are people that be content with the fact that an Igbo man is there, not because an Igbo man is doing something right, but because an Igbo man is there. So how are you going to prove to me or tell me that, and people are going to look at you as a Yoruba man first before you're an activist? That is the truth. And so before you move on, there's some people that will not move past that part. So how would you overcome the tribalistic and nepotic and corrupt sentiments that people have?
Thank you very much. You raised very important questions. Instead of attacking me, you should have asked me to give you the breakdown. What you should understand is that these things come in different formats, considering where I am. And for example, I have actually spoken extensively about, in detail, what we intend to do about security, what we intend to do about power. For example, we said that we will, and I said that today at the BBC, that we are bringing 4,500 megawatts of renewable energy to Nigeria, northern Nigeria. And what is renewable energy? Solar alone. And just so that you are not in doubt about this, I said you can look at Morocco. Morocco is now selling power to Malta and France because they had the foresight to develop their solar energy sector by building 4,500 megawatts of electricity. So that is one solution. We have mentioned how many kilometers of roads we will build to give us the infrastructure we need. In particular, we mentioned that we will create an interstate highway system in Nigeria that connects all the region by dual carriageway. I just mentioned to you that in the health sector, first we have to attack the primary health sector issue by deploying most people in Nigeria, including some of your relatives, and I'm not saying it to degrade you, have never taken their blood pressure before. So to stop the carnage of avoidable death, and most people die from stress and health-related issues, that will have 160,000 healthcare professionals heading in that direction, 200,000 teachers heading in the direction of education. So we have immediate solutions that are there. When you talk about terrorism or this whole thing about Buhari, I have to say though, and it's very, very important that we don't trivialize Nigeria by saying that northern Nigeria believes that Buhari is doing what is right. I just came from northern Nigeria, and not just northern. I went to Kano, I went to Kaduna, and nobody can tell you that Buhari is doing anything for them. The worst road I have been in the last 3 months is the Kano-Kaduna road. If there's anybody from there, they will tell you, you think northerners are happy about it. When we were talking to the people in the north, women, they were talking about sending their children to school. They kept mentioning Makaranta, because which is the name for schools, because they understand that education will help to lift them out of poverty. The poorest part of Nigeria is northern Nigeria. There's no need exaggerating it. Do they want to get out of poverty? Yes. Did they think that Buhari could bring them? That's exactly the reason they voted for Buhari. They believe that he could get them out of poverty. They call him Megaskia, the man of the truth. But today, they themselves are heartbroken. So don't let us be overplaying this. Buhari had lost 3 elections in the same Nigeria. And now he's about to lose the 4th time, courtesy of the way we are approaching politics. Buhari is no longer popular in northern Nigeria. Let me break it down for you. The people of Plateau are not going to vote for Buhari because of what he did by overlooking the Fulani herdsmen farmers crisis. The same thing will happen in Benue. The Shiites, the people who are Shiites, there are about 10 million of them. They are not voting for Buhari because Buhari summarily executed their members and buried them in mass graves. Don't think those people will vote for Buhari. The people who he promised that he will wipe Boko Haram from their villages, they are still waiting for him. I don't think they will vote for Buhari. So tribalism is a tool that has been thrown by our leaders to divide and conquer us. And a lot of people have seen beyond that. And I have seen it because I just came from Nigeria. You mentioned that I'm Yoruba man. You don't even know where I come from. Because I'm not about my ethnicity and I'm not going to disclose it to you at this event. It's true. Most of you don't even know where I come from. But people accept my message or the message we are giving to them because they know that we are not ethnic bigots. The younger generation Nigerians have seen through ethnicity and nepotism. Yes, Buhari is a nepotistic head of state. He was elected as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But by his own design, he became the school prefect or senior prefect of Daura High School. That is his problem. And the rest of Nigeria has seen through that Buhari is not a national leader. Are they going to vote for Buhari in the southeast? My answer is no. Is he going to get another term from the southwest people? I would say nah. And is he going to get any vote from the south-south? No. North central, that includes Benue, Plateau, even Kwara. I don't see it happening. So where is the magic going to come to continue as a nepotistic and tribalistic leader? I think Nigerians are coming around understanding that even the so-called zoning and turn-by-turn politics is not working for them. If you go to the southeast, who is the governor of Imo State? Is a southeasterner. Even though by way of his performance, people are questioning where he comes from. But let's even leave that alone. If you go to Owerri, you want to go and try Rochas Okorosha in the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. The place is broken. It didn't seem as if there was government in Owerri. It took us longer to get from, it was shorter to get from Lagos by air to Owerri than it took us to get from the airport in Owerri to the hotel. The place is in shambles. Is it not from there? So leadership is key. My brother, you cannot overrule. It is because of leadership that we don't have all the things. The leadership that you are asking for, the question you are asking from me is actually the easiest thing to do. I can go on Google and go and download and tell you that these are the things I will do. I'll do magic, I'll do magic, I'll do magic. But the thing is, you will need to look at my background. You need to look at my character. You need to look at my consistency before you can believe those things. Otherwise, you are going to fall into the hands of the same 419 leaders that have been leading Nigeria. Didn't they say that Babangida was the best leader at the time in Nigeria? Because why? He knew how to dribble people until he dribbled himself out of power. So I don't know what we need to do to convince ourselves that we need to go in a fresh direction. We have tried 2 presidents now who used to be former president. This is where they left us. We have tried the military option, we've tried the civilian option, we've tried military guys who used to be military and they became civilians. We've tried some young people, and then we've tried a lot of old people. Now it's time to try something fresh. And that is the person who is engaging with you. Now, I am presenting myself based on integrity. And my integrity is verifiable integrity. So you don't have to go too far to know that I'm the guy who used to do Sahara Reporters. I'm the guy who used to go to those meetings to challenge leaders. I'm the guy who used to bring out all the dossiers of the corrupt people. I'm the guy who used to lead all those protests that you talk about, including the one where we went and disrupted the minister's town hall meeting in New York in those days. Or the guy who took on a minister of communication on radio 2 weeks ago, and as the outcome of that encounter was, they said we took him to the cleaners. I don't know yet until next year before I can convince myself that we took them to the cleaners. But we need to do that very quick and fast. So please, I want you to keep an eye on this. And like I said, if you cannot support me and you feel that I'm not convincing enough, please find another young person to follow. Please do not follow any of these old, ragged, corrupt, incompetent, mediocre in the country. That's my charge to you.
Yes. My name is Valentina, and I wanted to ask you. You said that you wanted to employ 200,000 teachers and 250,000 nurses. How are you going to pay them? Is it going to be monthly salary that you're going to give them? Because, for instance, I'm from Ghana, and our president was like, "Oh, I'm going to give you free SHS," which he did. But then there's no infrastructure for the students to live in. We have no tables, no chairs. So there is lack in other areas. So how are you going to cover all of this, and how are you going to pay your budget?
Thank you, my sister from Ghana. Is it in Ghana the place where they would drill computer on the blackboard?
Yes.
Yes. You guys still got a long way to go. But that's on the lighter side. Honestly, I travel to Ghana frequently, and it's so sad to admit to you that if we can get Nigeria to where Ghana is today, a lot of Nigerians will return home like tomorrow. But what we are saying here is that even if you look at the Ghanaian economy, who do you think is running the Nigerian economy? It's Nigerian money. A lot of our rich people are there. We are the ones managing your telecommunication networks. We are the ones bringing money through your banks. Every bank in Nigeria has a Ghanaian corresponding bank, and we are doing well because we are not doing too well. So you guys better brace, because when we take all of our funds back from you, you might need to be a little bit more innovative in running your economy, because a lot of our monies are now running the Ghanaian economy. But here is what it is. The reason I mentioned that is that most of Nigeria's wealth is looted and taken outside of the country to develop other parts of the world. You should just go to Dubai and know how much we've invested there. Go to the property market here in the UK. If you know how much of Nigeria's money has been invested here, just between 2012 and 2015, when the last regime in Nigeria was kicked out, it has been revealed that over $2 billion, maybe about $1.5 billion of Nigeria's oil money had come to the property markets in the UK, or somehow passed through the UK banks. It's part of the problem. We punish our corrupt people, but the UK don't punish their corrupt banks and bankers and investment bankers, they call them. But that will be resolved when we have the right leadership in place. So corruption is one of the sources, one of the reasons why we can't pay our teachers. Do you know how much we pay our teachers? We pay our civil servants. We pay them 18,000 naira per month. That is the equivalent of $50 per month. Even your country, Ghana, is paying people more money than that per month. The minimum wage in Ghana is higher than that of Nigeria. But here is another factor, and I'm breaking it down to you, sister, is that 21% of Nigeria's civil servants are ghost workers, fake workers. They don't exist, and we pay them salaries. They just found 80,000 of such people within Nigeria police about 3 weeks ago. So by the time we purge ghost workers out of our civil service system, our wage bill will be reduced. And our plan is to pay Nigerian workers 100,000 naira per month. That is the minimum wage. And we have calculated that it's a good starting living wage. We have to proceed from there very quickly. But the question is, what is also the tax rate in Nigeria? It's also lower than Ghana. Ghana's tax rate is about 16%. They're collecting about 60%. Nigeria is still at about 70%, miserable 70%, which means they are not collecting the taxes we deserve to be collecting to pay for social services. The same thing is happening with companies in Nigeria. Guinness, as I mentioned them, I'm not afraid to say it, they were owing us 5 billion naira last year. They only ended up paying 800 million. And the rest of the money, they do what they call paddy in Nigeria, or rub my back, I rub your back. If you can have a president that can help collect all the taxes that generate revenue, and we plug all the leakages, you will have more than enough money to pay for the services. But there's the catch. If we stop all the leakages, we'll be saving $5 billion every year in Nigeria from corrupt people. And the number one corruption fighter that you can ever have is the person that is sitting in front of you via Skype today. I know how to stop all these guys from taking our monies out of the country. I know how to create the paper trail. And the moment we save $5 billion from corruption, we are only paying workers $1.5 billion if and when we increase the minimum wage to a living wage of 100,000. So we will still have $3.5 billion to play around with. If you add that to the tax base and the tax collection rate that we intend to increase, how we intend to stop leakages and increase our revenue base by creating employment, by providing electricity, and all the multiplier effects that are out there that will come from just serious leadership. And I come to leadership, my brother, who is talking about leadership. There's no reason why the Lagos-Ibadan highway should be fixed for over 20 years now. They have not been able to finish it. These are things that should be done in months. And the loss that you get from doing all this just costs you too much. Right now, nobody's talking about it, but we have started selling oil at $70 per barrel again. And hunger is still pervasive in Nigeria. Why? Because we're spending most of that money helping our president to take treatment in the UK, parking his jet for 170 days at 5,000 euros per night. These are unconscionable ways of spending money. And on top of that, we are funding greedy people. It is time to take that money and fund those who are in need of Nigeria's financial help.
Thank you very much for that. Omoyele Sowore, something happened many decades ago, at least 2 to 3 decades now it seems, although I may not be precise about that. I was in the University of Lagos then.
Yes.
I happened to be present at a rally you were speaking at as president, and I just looked at you and I wondered, how did this young person get himself into so much trouble? You were surrounded by all these older guys, and it was top politics, top quality student unionism.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, how did it just, why is it not easier for him to be at home? You have not ceased to impress me. Since then, I was impressed then, I am impressed again. I'm asking myself, how did he get himself into this kind of shit again? You are going for the top job.
Yes.
I wish you all the best. I'm sure everybody here wish you the best. And you have a long road ahead of you to navigate. So, one last question, and we'll let you go because I understand you are still going for another.
Yes, another meeting. Yes.
And tomorrow we will be having a big rally, town hall event
In London. Yes.
Yes, and we are looking forward to that. I will be there certainly, and some promise to come along. My last question for you: as president of Nigeria, what would be the foreign policy of Nigeria? What would be your take on the foreign policy thrust of Nigeria? Would it be the same old thing, Africa being the centerpiece of Nigerian foreign policy, or are you going to change it in favor of any other, regional focus? And if I may be more specific, what would be your take on the China-Africa relationship, China-Nigeria relationship, as opposed to the good old Europe and US focus that we've had? What's your foreign policy going to be? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a very, very good question. But the foreign policy of Nigeria right now is driven by foreigners. That's the truth. And what I've seen in recent years is that this kind of a Cold War coming back again. And all of it is economic. Look, the truth is that Nigeria is being treated as a mining site as opposed to being a country. And when you have a country as big as Nigeria being treated as a mining site, the foreign policy of Nigeria is treated, of the foreign engagement of Nigeria with the rest of the world, is treated based on resources that Nigeria can provide to the world. It's not treated based on the integrity of the Nigeria or of Nigeria's territory and its people. So our foreign policy will be focused on respect for the Nigerian states and the Nigerian peoples. And that would, of course, I would not lie to you that I want our foreign policy to be centered around Africa, but it's in such a way that Africa can become more united and become a bigger player on the world stage. That is definitely going to be it. But what needs to happen is this, and there's no foreign policy that you can have that is going to be respectable if you don't have a government. The way I see Nigeria is like Nigeria has no government, and you find out that all of our policies are dictated from outside to us, and it's dictated based not on our strength but our weaknesses. So I go to China and the US and Europe. Again, it boils down to our resources. They want our resources, and then they dictate to us who we should follow. For example, US is very agitated about our relationship with China. China is happy that Nigeria is also providing its leeway. But how about we build our country to the point where people start coming to us and say, please help us, as opposed to this one that we are going to everybody to help us. The reason why China and Europe and US dominate our foreign policy so much is that they have to help us get everything we need. We don't produce anything. We are not respected. We are not respected as a country. We are not respected as a people. Our passport is viewed with, scorn everywhere we go. So I would not tell you specifically what I would do about China. I don't want to get in the mix of how China and the US and all of them are trying to penetrate Nigeria. What it tells me, if they are so interested in Nigeria, is that Nigeria has got something to offer. And I'm sure that by the time they see the quality of leadership that we assemble in Nigeria, when we win in 2019, it will be very clear to them the direction in which we are headed and where we want to head. So, in referring to me as the little boy who used to like trouble, now I've grown to like even more trouble. But the trouble I have now is a good trouble to have, because it's a trouble that is about to save world's largest country for black people. And I want to say finally that our policy, foreign policy, would extend to include the promotion of the betterment of the dignity of the black man. Because if Nigeria gets it right, I think a lot of black people will be proud to be black.
Thank you. Can we give Omoyele Sowore a good round of applause?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I apologize once again for using this, but this is the future. I want to be the president of Nigeria that can speak to you directly from the presidential office, not villa. I don't want to call it a villa because I'll be working from anywhere. I'll be working virtually from anywhere via Skype. That's why I've been saying that, these analog leaders have to go so that we can practice governance by digital technology.
Yes, although we are about just a dozen or just a score, 20 or 30 people here, definitely thousands will see this interview because we are placing it on the web, and
yes,
that is the magic of the moment we live in.
Absolutely.
So we're looking forward to also your promise to come to Kent.
I'm coming to Kent. Like I said, I haven't found one of the things that happened to me was the lecture I delivered at Kent last year. It gave me a new direction after leaving that place. I just thought to myself, oh my God, there's something very divine, now speaking religiously about coming to Kent the last time I came there, and how the role that played in what I'm doing today. So thank you, Kent, and Kent Sowore will be back.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.